clock has struck 3 p.m. here in Stockholm, Sweden at our headquarters in Kodiak Hub. Welcome to today's event. My name is Sam Jenks, Chief Growth Officer at Kodiak Hub. Happy to be welcoming you into today's webinar, How to Create Supplier Collaboration with an SRM Tool. Our focus today is to make sure that you leave with the tools that you need to understand how to drive forward the relationships you have with your suppliers. And guiding you on that journey will be Simon Geale, CPO at Proxima, a Bain company, as well as Angelina Kushma, Senior Product Owner here at Kodiak Hub, who will be providing an actual demonstration of the Kodiak platform, showing how our actions functionality will be able to help you and your team drive collaboration with your suppliers. Supplier collaboration is a necessary fact with any global value chain. It's a well-oiled machine to have a relationship between a buyer and a supplier, which will drive value in your organization. The fact is, though, supplier relationships, the collaboration and innovation involved with them, it's a costly fact. It requires resources and time from you and your team in your procurement organization. But let's be honest, suppliers are moving from being vendors to being partners. They are a crucial part of your bottom line, but also to drive collaboration and innovation in your organization. Our focus today is to make sure that you leave with the tools you need to be able to drive collaboration within your organization. And I want to hand it over to Simon Geale, who's going to be able to tell you why collaboration with your suppliers is so important. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for the handover and thank you for inviting me today. So my name's Simon Geale. I'm CPO at a company called Proxima Group, which is part of Bain & Company. We're a specialist procurement consultancy. But what you need to know is that I'm passionate about procurement, and today I've come dressed a little bit like a pint of Guinness. But I'm not here to talk to you about that. I'm here to talk to you about collaboration. I know collaboration, it's a bit of a buzzword. It gets used a lot. Probably at times when it's not really a collaboration. Maybe sometimes when people talk about being collaborative, it's a manifestation of what they're not rather than what they are. A bit like values. Have you ever noticed how company values often depict the exact opposite of what it's like to be there? They say things like teamwork, community, respect, but a truer reflection might be cutthroat, aggressive, unwelcoming. Does the same happen in collaboration? Well, certainly a lot of the collaborative behaviors that I've seen might feel that way. When you put yourself into the supplier's shoes, you could argue actually that they're on the end of something a bit more tactical than a true collaboration. True collaboration is something that you do with and not to. Let me give you an example. Recently, I was consulting on an early stage innovation program, which would most likely bring together 3 or 4 suppliers to make a market. So far, so good. Many collaboration projects are based on this principle that by coming together, businesses can create new growth areas, more than they could do on their own. So we started out with 3 partners and we were in search of a tech partner to join this crew. We identified 4 businesses and we thought, well, let's have some exploration sessions with them. It won't be too formal. We'll get to know each other. We'll socialize the idea and we'll create this collaborative culture before we get into business. What was the experience like? Well, suppliers were given a 20-minute slot to attend an online meeting. They had little or no advanced briefing because it was informal. Screen goes on and they're met with 6 to 8 faces. One of them welcomes them, and then they face an assortment of questions that covers about 10 minutes from a disjointed panel, and then the same voice that welcomes them closes the session to a formal close. Screen goes blank. How does that feel? Well, on the buy side, it felt great. We were doing these collaborative meetings, we were meeting all these people, but now put yourself in the supplier's shoes. How would that feel? But the pressure is on to collaborate. It's coming. We hear it all around us. Every day, wherever we look, there are reminders that we need to be more diverse, more sustainable, more digital, and more collaborative in our approaches to achieve these, because it's the fastest route to opportunity. But rather than being put off by the noise, like perhaps we often are, perhaps it's time to be inspired by it. Because there's one surefire way to know when something's moving from a concept to a reality. It's when consultants like me and software firms have something to sell to you. We do it because we know that you need it. So it's here. But you can't just say go forth and collaborate, because collaboration in itself is not the goal. And neither is the principle new. So I myself presented on this very topic about 6 years ago. I did a lot of research and I took inspiration from this book. Now I'm going to forgive you if you haven't read it, because it's ranked 661,000 298th in books on Amazon's, 164th in books about procurement, and bizarrely 562nd in books about industrial archaeology. But hear me out. It's written by a professor called Jeffrey H. Dyer, and he takes inspiration from the automotive sector, explaining how Toyota and Chrysler, in particular, stole a march on their rivals a few decades back by figuring out the value of their extended enterprise, their supplier networks. So he termed it winning through the extended enterprise of supplier networks, delivering collaborative advantage. And this aligned really closely to a theory that I was developing at the time on the evil of procurement, so where it had come from as a function and where it was going to go next. So in this model, we can chart the future of procurement, or the history of procurement, or probably both. From a decentralized and tactical buying desk down here in the bottom left, to developing specialisms and changing the shape of the function into this sort of hierarchical triangular shape here, to partnering with the business to generate work, and then moving that relationship on to partner with the business and influence strategy through market insights, to eventually this network partner role, featuring more collaborative behaviors and working on perhaps new products and programs. Essentially, we're talking about moving from an operator to an orchestrator. But in creating the model and then trying to apply it to the real world, which is pretty important when it comes to consultancy in particular, I came to the conclusion that actually most functions still needed a bit of all of those. And all of those bits relied on different specialisms and different tools in particular. Some of them could be run entirely on technology, some of them were tech enabled, and some of them were tech informed, for instance. And in fact, they were calibrated around lots of different parameters, making them really well distinct. So if we take a look at just a couple of those competing parameters to illustrate the point, we talk a lot about how procurement should focus on revenue, but it also has to focus on cost. We also talk about how businesses need their suppliers to provide agility, but they also benefit from standardization. So competing priorities. And taking just these two parameters highlights how a modern procurement approach might not just be one function, but we could assume here, for instance, it's three. A digital function, working on our processes, tactical sourcing, data, a delivery function in the middle, out there working in supply chains, and an innovation function at the top, focused on growing new products and services and getting the best from wider value chains. But how different are these really? Well, completely different insofar as why they exist, their purpose, how they work, who touches them, who sponsors them, how you measure them, what the success factors are to setting them up. As procurement becomes more specialized, more democratized, more digitized, its challenge will be to stay relevant, convenient, and deliver value. And that value can only be measured through the eyes of its customers. And evolving these three functions, making them as good as they can possibly be as needs change, preferences change, and the perception of value changes, inevitably will lead to flavors of collaboration. For example, in this digital space, there will be challenges around building transparency and connected data ecosystems. There'll be cross-sector and cross-supplier initiatives on risk, sustainability, and particularly human rights and emissions measurement and reduction. In this middle space, there'll be a continuous evolution of offerings, particularly around Industry 4.0. It's going to enable us to transform the goods and services that we buy and supply ecosystems that we're a part of. The big changes here will come from big and bold ambition, much of which will come from your relationships with the marketplace. And up here in the top right, in the search for growth, many of our businesses will be working in collaborative teams, often with tech providers, perhaps with peers, to disrupt current industry norms and create new markets. That will also be a norm, and in some ways it will be the survival of the fastest and the survival of the fittest, both of which will be achieved through collaboration, multiplying brain power, speeding things up, and de-risking investments. Collaboration will be a norm. It just won't be the norm, because as we know, as we've just seen, there will be different flavors of procurement. There will need to be different flavors because we will need different types of trading relationships. And you don't have to take my thoughts as evidence, but you do, or should rather, have a look at some of the trends which are coming, some of the trends which are changing our world, disrupting our businesses or disrupting ourselves. But they give an indication of the sorts of things that are to come. So this painting was, or illustration, I should say, was illustrated by an artist called Alain Robida. He was French and he illustrated it in about 1880. It's called A Night at the Opera in the year 2000. So he illustrated this roughly 120 years before the image that it depicts. Actually, it's 5 years before the first production motor car and 23 years before the Wright brothers first set flight. And given that it shows people arriving on flying vehicles, I think it's pretty good, right? And I think predicting the future must be fun. But I do suspect that there were some clues around him to come up with his vision for the future. Now, for us, because that short-term future is much nearer the next 10, 20 years, there are lots of clues around us to predict what procurement should and will be doing. And we're about to be involved in career-defining change programs that are going to need a collaborative approach. These trends that we're seeing on the screen are by and large unstoppable, and businesses will need to react in time and suppliers will invest to solve. Your business will need to face into them, either as pioneers in search for competitive advantage or as settlers coming to profiteer or manage risk. The trends are bigger than any of us and the businesses that we work in. Some might be more industry specific, some might rely on Industry 4.0 technology, but they'll all rely on transparency, connectivity, and the ecosystems that deliver value. There's a new business system emerging, and thus a new procurement system, one based on transparent and interconnected value ecosystems. Now, I know what you're thinking. Only a consultant could have written that phrase, and you're right, but hear me out, because each of those words is deliberately chosen. We can change it afterwards if you like, but they're all deliberately chosen. So transparent, because we will want to, need to, and be able to see through our businesses, our supply chains, and our wider challenges, so our wider value chains. We have to address the challenges that we're facing. Connected, because that transparency will come from connecting up value chains. Suppliers, procurement, events, transactions will all be converted into data packages so that we can see them as systems and monitor them and optimize them. Value, because we'll think about value differently. We already are starting to think about value differently, but also because as we see increased intervention from investors and governments and a more direct and agile link to our customers, we're operating within value chains now, not just supply chains. An ecosystem, because many of the answers to today's big questions around data, risk, sustainability are already being solved with an ecosystem approach, as are some of the most exciting future products like driverless cars or vertical farming or sustainable fuels. Businesses are seeking collaborative advantage, and they're also seeking to de-risk common innovations that do not deliver competitive advantage. Closer to home, closer to now, our own research as Proxima has told us that more than half of CEOs expect to spend more time on supply chain issues this year compared to last. We are in focus, 1 to 2 days a week of focus, apparently. 3 in 10 of those CEOs could not answer yes when asked if they had the transparency and visibility that they wanted to make informed decisions and manage risks effectively. When it comes to investors, 80% of them consider the sustainability of a business's supply chain when making investment decisions. They want to see through. And how big's the problem? Well, suppliers account for 75% of total expenditure or 65% of revenues if you're a Fortune 500. You can find all that research on Proxima.com, but the evidence is overwhelming. The spotlight is on. We need to do bigger and bolder things which touch deeper into these broader organizational needs. And suppliers and broader value chains will be critical for our success. So we're going to go back now to 2017, or even 2000, actually, in Jeffrey H. Dyer. So when I was undertaking my research into collaboration, I spoke to several businesses. I read a lot and I sat down with some suppliers, particularly those in the SRM space. And what I was trying to find out was, what are the preconditions for doing this well? And there was a few things that leapt to mind. For instance, generally speaking, organizations that were doing this well were really collaborating on things that mattered. It wasn't fluffy. It wasn't just a buzzword. It was very, very focused. Because of that, they often had a very clear value proposition, strong sponsorship and buy-in from their executive, making it real and making it focused again. Often they'd grown into collaboration from supplier management. So they'd done supplier management first and then taken that next leap. I don't know if that's always true today, but certainly that was the case. And because of that, they were all using tech to power them. Now, because I'm a consultant, because I was presenting at a conference, I tried to convert this into 5 golden rules or focus areas for collaboration based on the examples that we'd seen, what these organizations were excelling at. And I tried to relate them back to, in this instance, whether you're an SRM administrator, a relationship manager, or a collaborator. But what I've done in this case is I've applied them to our 3 functions. So the first trait that we saw was that vision and strategy really are key. So you're bringing together different parties. Why are each of them doing this? It's imperative that each party in a collaboration and their internal teams understand why they're in. The degree to which it might be risk or value could change, or top or bottom line can flex. But different parties are in that collaboration for different reasons at a different point in time. This has to be understood. The second was ethos, or what I really wanted to say was change the concept of reward, but I couldn't fit it into the box. So what does each party get from the collaboration? It's really important to understand the drivers behind and move from that sort of win at all costs to win at a team mentality. You have to look at each party through their lens to think about what are the rewards that matter to them and what are the barriers you've got to overcome. The third, rather obviously, was that this was going to take on different capabilities and skills. This is a behavioral and cultural change as much as a task change. We live in a specialized world and we need more specialized skills if we're going to evolve these functional areas. In that growth function, for instance, when we're looking at new product development, we may need product knowledge, planning, data interpretation, orchestration skills, relationship skills, different things to what we might need in another area of procurement. The fourth is that tech is absolutely critical. It's the only way to manage these programs at scale, and it's the only way to deliver transparency and connectivity. Our worlds are becoming more digital, but tech is becoming more experiential. We move from enterprise tech to experience tech, which is a good thing for all of us. And finally, embrace change. Change is fundamental. You need to be in a constant state of innovation, always seeking to improve. But the best innovators, as I said earlier, are very deliberate in their approach. The best leaders are challengers. So I want you to walk away from today and unleash your inner Mick Jagger. What do I mean by that? Mick Jagger is one of the ultimate challengers. So there's a pretty famous book called The Challenger Sale, which I had to read once. And instead I decided to Google the concepts and I found myself with challenger thinking. What's challenger thinking? It's recognizing your constraints and overcoming them, using them to do something great. So there's lots of great challenger thinkers out there, but a story which resonated with me was told by a gentleman called Mark Barden from a consultancy called Eat the Big Fish. And he talks about Mick Jagger in the early days of the Rolling Stones wanting to be the world's greatest rock and roll frontman, but finding himself playing in tiny stages in pubs and clubs with no room really to move and run around like you might see him do today. So what did he do? He developed a unique dancing style that he could do in that space that was unique to him. He used that constraint to his advantage to do something great. You are going to come up with many barriers as to why you can't succeed, why you can't move your business and supplier relationships into collaboration. Use those barriers to your advantage. Go forth and collaborate.
Hi, I'm Angelina and I'm product owner in Kodiak Hub, and today I'm happy to introduce you new actions in our platform, and I go through the main use cases of the actions and will show you how you can use them. So let's start. Here on the screen you can see actions list and main action information like action name, supplier, responsibles, due date, status of the action. Also you can filter by 2 different things. First is supplier properties, but also you can filter by action main information like action type, action status, due date, and all different action stakeholders. As a super user, you will be able to manage action types. This is the new feature we are introducing, and apart from the standard action types, you will be able to add your types or remove some of the standard if you don't use them in your daily work. Let's try to create a new action, and we were thinking what use cases we want to introduce to you, and one of the common use cases is can be trainings. And trainings, for example, is a mandatory for suppliers during onboarding time. So you can create now such type of trainings through actions and send them out to all the suppliers who are now going through the onboarding. Let's try to create this type of the action. We click Add New button, and here in the list we should choose the type of the action. Here you can see the last one is training. It wasn't the standard type in the list, so I added it additionally. This way you can do it also under your account, and then you will be able to use this type as well. Let's choose the training type. Then we go click on the Create button and see a pretty known by you already step-by-step approach. This way of creating you might seen in notifications, in assessments. So we introduce the same approach in actions as well. First of all, you should specify action name and action purpose. As it is a training, let's add some standard name for it, and then a purpose. While I'm adding the information about the purpose, I can tell you that purpose field is not mandatory, and it's only for internal use, where you can specify for other colleagues why you're creating this action, what's the purpose of it, but it won't be shown for suppliers anywhere. Then after specifying name and purpose, you can specify start and end date of the action. It can be any according to your process. Let's, for example, choose the start date next week, Monday, and end date Friday next week. Those are mandatory steps, and you should always specify them, because start date is when all the stakeholders and all suppliers and approvers will receive notifications with the link to the action, and end date is the due date, which will be monitored, and everyone will be notified about the due date, especially if it is overdue. Next step is the content. Content is the main area where you should specify what you basically want to tell to the supplier, what they should do. So as we are creating action, let's add action for a training. Let's add a description. Here is the training about UN Global Compact, and you can, for example, encourage your supplier upload code of conduct after such type of a training. For this purpose, you can request a document. Let's select compliance category and code of conduct type. So this way you request a document from supplier, they will have upload button, so they will be able to upload this document. And as the example or some additional information, you can attach also some publications about the UN Global Compact Guide. So you add it as an attachment. Here on the content main area, you will see description about the action, you will see requested documents and additional attached documents. But that's not it. If your action is complex and you have more than one step to do inside that action, you can create sub-actions. In our case, it can be several steps inside the training. So let's try to create few steps as an example. First step is a human rights. There you can also add additional description as well as the link if you want to redirect supplier to some additional guides or videos and so on. Then you can add more sub-actions. Basically, you can add as many sub-actions as you need for your case. And when supplier sees this action, they will be able to change the status per sub-action. So you will see the gradual progress on the whole action. I think that's enough for the presentation, so I added 2 sub-actions. Let's proceed now to the next step. Next step is the place where you are basically adding who are the suppliers for your action. In our case, we are using a training which suppliers should pass during onboarding time. So our filter for suppliers will be pending approval status, and then we filter out such suppliers. Here we can see that we have now 2 suppliers in pending approval state, and we add them. When you created this action, there will be 2 copies of action created, 1 per supplier. So you will be able to monitor the progress per supplier. And let's go to the final step, is stakeholders management. And here you should specify who is responsible for your action, who is approving the action, who is reviewing, and who is observer for the action. Here we were using our ACI approach for this stakeholder management. Is the well-known it's a well-known rule of clear and good stakeholder management. Let's try to add a new stakeholder, and we choose responsible type, as probably someone should be responsible for the action. And from the supplier side, you should specify supplier property. Here you will see all the supplier properties with the email type, so you can choose one which you need, and this way you assign action to the specific supplier property, which will contain email and they will receive notifications. For the training, we most likely don't need additional approver, so we can unclick the checkbox, and this way approver is not needed for the action. Other roles, I think, also not needed for the training. After completing all 4 steps, you can click Send, and this way your action is going to be created, and now you will see that 2 actions were created, 1 per supplier. Let's now go to one more use case. For example, next use case can be a supplier performance review. Also a very known case in your daily work. We go through the same steps. We populate the action name, then we go with the purpose. Just to remind, it's not a mandatory field and it's only for internal use. Then we specify action start and due date. Again, it can be any according to your process, so let's just choose some of the dates. Next step is the content. What additional use case I would like to show you in the content is that you can use all the standard editing for the text to make it more clear for the supplier. You can, for example, highlight the text in bold if needed. You can highlight it with a different color. So all different editing for the text is possible in actions. So here you will be able to use it. Same in the sub-actions. Sub-actions are containing also the same type of the field with the description. So you can also modify it the way you need. For example, you want to add some bullet points. So here you go. Yeah, I think one sub-action is enough for the demo. And then let's go to suppliers. It's a performance review, so probably it's for one supplier. You can specify them. And then in the stakeholders, as I mentioned, we are using our ACI framework. So let's try to add responsible for user for each role. Responsible will be supplier, so it's a supplier property. Then let's try to add an approver. Approver can be only user, so you cannot assign supplier property as an approver. We limited it to only user. Let's choose one. Let's also choose a reviewer. For example, it's going to be also user and observer. Observers are those people who usually don't actively participate in the action. They just get notifications. They know what is happening with the action. They can open it and see it, but they don't participate, they don't approve, they don't add comments, they don't attach files. Reviewers is a bit different type of the role. They usually act as a consultants for the action, for the responsibles. If they have some questions, if responsible people have some questions, they can always ask reviewers for the advice. And for this purpose, we have a comment area, which I will show you in a minute. Let's finish this action and click Send button. You will see this action also in the list. So now, after all these minutes of the demo, we see 3 actions created. And let's go and see how action look like when it is created and supplier or user opens it. Let's open some another action, for example, corrective action plan. One more use case why you would like to use new actions. Here you can see action overview. Biggest part of the first page is the action timeline. So right away, without any time spending on finding what is the status of the action, you can see the timeline. You can see a general description of the action, requested documents if they are there, some attachments if they were attached initially, but also as a user you can attach more files. Then you can see responses area is the communication area where both sides, supplier and user, can discuss the action and they can answer all the questions. Here on the left side, you can see all the sub-actions. For the corrective action plan, it's going to be probably a list of non-conformities, or how you can see in our example, we were using 5S protocol with the corrective actions, which means sort, set in order, shine, standardized, and sustain. It depends on your process and how you, the way you are creating a corrective action plan. But you can also open each of the sub-actions and see the name of the sub-action and the description. As a supplier and also as few types of users, you will be able to start and finish sub-actions. Let's try to finish this sub-action and see how it will behave. Yes, here you can see confirmation that status was changed. You can also start the sub-action, and then this way it will be in progress. Anytime you can see the progress of your sub-actions, and once a supplier is ready, they can click submit for approval, and that will mean that they are ready for approver to review the action and either complete it, move to done, or ask additional questions. Normally, when supplier submits for approval, all sub-actions should be completed, but we don't limit it. It's up to supplier what they want to what they want to complete. And the main area where approver can find all the answers regarding the action will be basically requested documents, if any of the documents were requested and then attached by supplier, but also any other attached documents, and responses area where they can give an answer or ask a question, but that will be one of the main way to communicate about the action. So I think I presented everything I wanted for today. It was a very big feature for us, so we are happy to introduce it finally, and we hope you will find it really useful and provide a lot of good feedback for us. Thank you.